Chapter 1. New Year, New Zip Code. Ryan Mitchell had never seen snowfall in real life until today. Sure, he'd seen it in movies, the romantic kind where flakes drift lazily past glowing street lamps while two people kiss like they invented kissing. This wasn't that. This was a Midwest snowstorm that looked like someone shook a giant snow globe and forgot to stop. He stood at the window of his new apartment, coffee mug in hand, watching the white chaos swirl outside. His Florida-born brain couldn't process it. Back home, January meant shorts and flip-flops, not thermal socks and boots that looked like they belonged on an Arctic expedition. "Welcome to the tundra," he muttered, taking a sip of coffee that was already lukewarm. He'd been here less than 24 hours, and the silence was deafening. No palm trees swaying, no ocean breeze, no familiar laughter from friends who drifted away long before he packed his life into cardboard boxes. Just him, a couch that looked lonely, and a stack of unopened moving boxes judging him from the corner. Ryan set the mug down and rubbed his face. 34 years old, single, and starting over in a city where the weather actively hated him. This was what he wanted, right? A change, a fresh start, something to shake him out of the rut he'd been stuck in for years. He'd had girlfriends, plural, but none that lasted. He'd had friends, but they were more like drinking buddies than lifelines. His life had been a loop: work, gym, bar, repeat. So when the job offer came from a digital marketing firm in the Midwest, he said yes before he could talk himself out of it. Now, staring at the snow like it was a personal enemy, he wondered if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from his mother. "Mom, how's the new place? Did you buy a coat yet? Please don't freeze to death. Love you." Ryan smiled despite himself and typed back. "Ryan, place is great. Coat acquired. Still alive. Love you too." He didn't mention that the coat made him look like a marshmallow with arms. Some things were better left unsaid. He glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. His first day at the new job. Time to meet the people who would either make this move worth it or send him running back to Florida with frostbite and regret. He grabbed his keys, shrugged into the marshmallow coat, and stepped outside. The cold hit him like a slap. His breath puffed out in clouds as he trudged to his car, muttering curses under his breath. By the time he scraped the ice off his windshield, a task he didn't know existed until last night, his fingers were numb. He cranked the heat and sat there, watching the dashboard slowly climb from Arctic to barely tolerable. "New year, new zip code," he said aloud, trying to make it sound like a mantra instead of a cry for help. The office building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, like it had been designed to impress clients and intimidate employees. Ryan parked, took a deep breath, and walked inside. The warmth hit him like a hug, and for a moment he felt human again. The front desk receptionist smiled brightly. "You must be Ryan Mitchell. Welcome to Brightwave Marketing." "Thanks," Ryan said, returning the smile. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. "Mr. Harlan will be right down to get you," she said, gesturing toward a seating area. Ryan sat, trying not to look like a nervous kid on the first day of school. He was scrolling through his phone when a voice cut through the lobby. "Mitchell?" Ryan looked up. The man approaching was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair at his temples and steely gray eyes that looked like they'd seen every excuse ever invented. His handshake was firm, his smile quick. "Arthur Harlan," he said. "Department head. Come on, let's get you settled." Ryan followed, matching his brisk pace. Harlan had the kind of presence that made you want to stand up straighter. He spoke in clipped sentences, sprinkled with dry humor and unsolicited life advice. "Digital marketing, huh?" Harlan said as they walked. "Fast-paced world. Everyone thinks it's about hashtags and influencers. It's not. It's about psychology. People don't buy products. They buy feelings. Remember that." "Yes, sir," Ryan said, filing that away. "Also," Harlan added, glancing at him, "never trust a man who wears socks with sandals. That's not marketing advice. That's life advice." Ryan chuckled. "Noted." They reached the HR office. Harlan opened the door and gestured inside. "Finish your paperwork with Kelly, and then we'll get you started." Ryan stepped in and froze, because standing behind the desk, looking as stunned as he felt, was Kelly. Kelly, with the hazel eyes that had once made him feel like someone was really listening. Kelly, whose laugh had cracked open something in him 2 years ago in a Vegas casino. Kelly, who had been his wife for exactly 9 hours. Time didn't just stop. It slammed into reverse. Ryan's brain short-circuited. The HR director was saying something, but he didn't hear a word. All he could see was her, still beautiful, still the woman who had made him believe, for one insane week, that love wasn't a fairy tale. And then his brain caught up. Of course she wasn't still wearing his ring. That was ridiculous. They hadn't seen each other in 2 years. She was probably engaged now. Women like Kelly didn't stay single for long. Kelly's lips parted like she was about to speak, but no sound came out. Her legs moved before her brain did. She walked straight toward him, ignoring the curious stares from the others in the office. She stopped right in front of him, looking into his eyes like she was searching for something. Ryan's heart pounded. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And then Kelly whispered, so softly he almost didn't hear it, Ryan? Chapter 2. The 9-hour bride. Ryan blinked. Once. Twice. His brain was still buffering like a bad internet connection. Kelly. His voice cracked like he was 13 again. Smooth. Mitchell. Real smooth. She nodded slowly, her hazel eyes wide, shimmering with something he couldn't name. Shock? Joy? Murderous intent? Hard to tell. The HR director cleared his throat, oblivious to the emotional nuclear blast happening in front of him. Ryan, this is Kelly Harper, our HR manager. She'll finish your onboarding paperwork. Kelly's lips twitched. HR manager. Of course. Because the universe didn't just throw curveballs. It launched them at your face with a grin. Ryan forced a smile that felt like it belonged in a hostage video. Hi, he said, because his vocabulary had apparently packed up and left. Hi, Kelly echoed, her voice soft but steady now. She turned to the HR director. I'll take it from here. The man nodded and left, humming like this was just another Tuesday. Ryan wished he could borrow that level of chill. Kelly gestured toward a chair. Sit, she said, and it wasn't a suggestion. Ryan sat. His pulse was doing jumping jacks. He watched her move behind the desk, her posture perfect, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun that screamed competence. 2 years ago, that same hair had been loose, tumbling over her shoulders as she laughed at his terrible Elvis impression in a Vegas casino. Vegas. God. It all came rushing back. The neon lights, the clinking slot machines, the way her laugh had cracked something open inside him. 4 days of talking about real life, not the Instagram-filtered version. 4 days of feeling seen. And then the midnight chapel, the vows, the ring, the morning after when reality hit like a freight train. Ryan swallowed hard. So, HR manager, huh? Kelly's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And you're the new digital marketing guy. Small world. Small world, Ryan repeated, because his brain was still stuck in Vegas. She slid a stack of forms toward him. Fill these out. He stared at the papers like they were written in ancient Greek. Kelly. Her pen froze mid-signature. Ryan. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. What are you doing here? I live here, she said, her tone calm, almost too calm. Work here. Have for a while. Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. This is insane. Kelly's eyes softened, just a fraction. Yeah, it is. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Ryan wanted to say 1,000 things. How he'd thought about her. How he'd wondered if letting her go was the biggest mistake of his life. But before he could speak, Kelly set down her pen and looked him dead in the eye. We need to talk, she said quietly. After this. Ryan's stomach flipped. Talk about what? Kelly hesitated, then said the words that detonated his entire morning. About the fact that we're still married. The sentence hung in the air like smoke. Ryan stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for her to laugh and say, just kidding. Happy New Year. But she didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. What? His voice was a whisper, sharp and disbelieving. Kelly folded her hands on the desk, her expression steady. I never filed my part of the annulment paperwork. Ryan's jaw dropped. You, what? Why? I don't know, she said, and for the first time her voice cracked. I told myself I'd do it. I even filled it out. But every time I tried to send it, I couldn't. Ryan pushed back from the chair, his pulse pounding in his ears. So you just, what? Let me waste 2 years thinking. Thinking what? Kelly shot back, her eyes flashing. That you were better off without me? Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was ugly and raw. He hadn't been better off. He'd been stuck, restless, chasing distractions that never filled the gap she left behind. He stood, pacing like a caged animal. Kelly, do you have any idea? Yes, she said softly, cutting him off. I have every idea. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the office disappeared. It was just them, standing in the wreckage of a choice they'd made under neon lights and bad decisions. Except, was it really a bad decision? Because Ryan's heart was pounding for all the wrong reasons. Or maybe all the right ones. Kelly broke the silence first. Finish your paperwork, she said, her voice trembling just enough to betray her calm facade. Then we'll talk. Ryan stared at her, his chest tight, his mind spinning. He sat down, picked up the pen and started writing. Not because he cared about the forms, but because he needed something, anything, to keep his hands from shaking. Chapter 3. 4 days in Vegas. 2 years ago, Ryan Mitchell had been sitting at a slot machine in a Vegas casino, arguing with it like it owed him money. Which technically it did. Come on, he muttered, jabbing the button. Just one win. One. Daddy needs some blue suede shoes. He threw in his best Elvis impression for good measure, earning a few side eyes from nearby gamblers. The machine blinked back at him with cold indifference. Ryan sighed, leaning back in his chair. He was 32, single, and spending his vacation losing to a piece of metal. If that wasn't a metaphor for his life, he didn't know what was. And then he heard it. A laugh. Not a polite chuckle, not a snicker. A full-bodied, can't hold it and laugh that rang out like music. Ryan turned his head and saw her. She was sitting 2 machines away, a slender brunette with hazel eyes that sparkled like the casino lights. Her hand covered her mouth, but it was too late. She'd been caught laughing at him. Ryan's cheeks warmed. "You think this is funny?" he asked, half grinning. She lowered her hand, still smiling. "You were bargaining with a slot machine." "Yeah. Well," Ryan said, straightening in his seat. "It started it." Her laugh bubbled up again, and Ryan couldn't help but smile. There was something about that sound, unfiltered, genuine, that made the neon lights seem less harsh. "I'm sorry," she said, catching her breath. "I didn't mean to interrupt your negotiation." Ryan shrugged. "No harm done. But if you're going to laugh at me, you owe me a drink." Her brows lifted. "Is that how it works?" "Vegas rules," Ryan said, deadpan. "You laugh, you buy." She tilted her head, considering. Then she smiled. A slow, warm smile that hit him like a jackpot. "Fine. One drink." They ended up at the bar, nursing cocktails and swapping stories like old friends. Ryan learned her name, Kelly Harper, and that she was in town for a girls' trip that had fizzled when her friends bailed last minute. He told her about Florida, about his job in digital marketing, about the rut he couldn't seem to escape. And then, somehow, they stopped talking about surface stuff and started talking about real life. The kind of conversations you don't have with strangers, or maybe only with strangers because there's no risk. They talked about regrets, about dreams they'd shelved, about the quiet fears that kept them up at night. Ryan didn't know why he told her things he'd never said out loud. Maybe it was the way she listened, like every word mattered. Maybe it was the way her eyes softened when he admitted he felt stuck, like she understood. Kelly confessed she felt the same, that she'd been coasting, waiting for something, anything, to shake her awake. They laughed about how pathetic that sounded, but neither of them really thought it was funny. For days, that's how long they had. For days of wandering the strip, watching shows, eating overpriced food, and laughing until their sides hurt. For days of feeling like the world had cracked open and let in something bright and unexpected. On the last night, after too many drinks and too much dancing, they stumbled into a midnight chapel. Ryan didn't remember who said it first. "Let's do something crazy." He just remembered Kelly's hand in his, her smile daring him to say no. He didn't. The ceremony was a blur of neon lights and bad Elvis impersonations. They exchanged vows that were half jokes, half promises, and when Ryan slid the ring onto her finger, something in his chest shifted. It was insane. It was reckless. It was perfect. Morning came with a hangover and a reality check. They sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the rings on their fingers like they were ticking bombs. "So," Ryan said, his voice hoarse, "we're married." Kelly groaned, burying her face in her hands. "Oh my God." Ryan laughed, because what else could he do? "Look, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened." She peeked at him through her fingers. "Ryan, we've known each other for 4 days. 4 amazing days," he said, grinning. "Best 4 days of my life." Her lips twitched, but her eyes were sad. "We can't, this isn't real." Ryan's smile faded. It felt real. Kelly looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression cracked. "It did," she whispered. They talked about annulment, about how insane it would be to uproot their lives for a marriage born of neon and tequila. They agreed it was the right thing to do. But when Ryan walked her to the airport, his chest felt hollow. At the gate, he turned to her. "Kelly, the time we spent together? That was real for me." Her eyes shimmered. "Me too." He tried to smile. "Another time, another life, maybe." She nodded, biting her lip. He joked about ships passing in the night, but when he hugged her, it didn't feel funny. It felt like goodbye to something he didn't want to lose. Before she boarded, he said softly, "You'll always be my favorite memory." Kelly blinked back tears. "Call me if you ever find yourself in the Midwest." Ryan watched her plane disappear into the sky, wondering if they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Chapter 4. Terms and Conditions. Ryan stared at the paperwork like it had personally betrayed him. His pen hovered over the signature line, but his mind was 1,000 miles away, or maybe 2 years back, in a neon-lit chapel where he'd promised forever to a woman he barely knew. Except now, sitting across from her in a corporate HR office. He realized he'd known her better in 4 days than he'd known anyone in his entire life. Kelly was quiet, too quiet. She was pretending to check something on her computer, but Ryan could feel her eyes flicking toward him every few seconds. The air between them was thick enough to cut with a letter opener. Finally, Ryan dropped the pen and leaned back in his chair. "Still married," he said flatly, like he was testing the words for cracks. Kelly winced. Technically. Ryan's voice rose, earning a curious glance from someone passing the doorway. He lowered it to a harsh whisper. "Kelly, that's not a technicality. That's a legal reality." She folded her hands, her expression calm but her fingers twitching. "I know." Ryan stood, pacing the small office like a man trying to walk off a panic attack. 2 years. 2 years, Kelly. I could have." He stopped, swallowing hard. "I could have been with you." Kelly's breath hitched, but she masked it with a shrug. You could have called. Ryan spun around, his eyes blazing. Don't put this on me. You said you'd file the paperwork. I tried, she said softly. I really did. Then why didn't you? His voice cracked, raw and unfiltered. Kelly looked down at her hands, then back up at him. Her hazel eyes were steady now, but there was something vulnerable in them, something that made Ryan's chest ache. Because every time I tried, it felt wrong, like I was erasing something that mattered. Ryan stared at her, his anger colliding with something else, something dangerous. Hope. So what? You just kept me on the back burner. Her lips curved into a sad smile. Ryan, you were never on the back burner. Silence stretched, heavy and electric. Ryan wanted to say 1,000 things. How he'd thought about her every damn day. How he'd wondered if letting her go was the biggest mistake of his life. But the words tangled in his throat. Kelly broke the tension first. Look, she said, her voice steady now. We need to figure this out. Legally, emotionally, all of it. Ryan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Yeah, sure. Figure it out. She stood, smoothing her skirt like she was trying to iron out the awkwardness. There's a coffee shop across the street. Meet me there after work. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. Fine. Kelly grabbed her coat, pausing at the door. Ryan. He looked up, his pulse still hammering. Her smile was small, almost shy. Happy New Year. Ryan watched her walk away, his heart pounding like it was trying to escape his chest. Happy New Year, he thought bitterly. The universe wasn't just bored. It was downright sadistic. Chapter 5. Coffee and Complications. The coffee shop across the street was warm and buzzing, a cozy refuge from the icy wind that had turned Ryan's face into a frozen mask. He pushed through the door, shaking snow from his coat, and scanned the room. Kelly was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming mugs and that same calm, collected posture that had driven him crazy in the HR office. Ryan walked over, his pulse thudding like a drum. You ordered for me? He asked, sliding into the chair opposite her. Kelly's lips curved into a faint smile. Black coffee. No sugar. No cream. Still your thing. Ryan blinked. You remember that? Her eyes flicked up, warm and steady. I remember a lot of things. Ryan swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how small the table was, how close they were sitting. He wrapped his hands around the mug like it could anchor him. So, he said, his voice rough, we're still married. Kelly nodded, her expression unreadable. We are. Ryan let out a sharp laugh. You say that like you're telling me the weather. Kelly's smile was wry. Would you prefer I panic? Maybe, Ryan shot back. At least then I'd feel like this is as insane for you as it is for me. Her gaze softened. Ryan, it's insane for both of us. He leaned forward, his voice low and tight. Then why didn't you file the paperwork? Kelly hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. Because I couldn't make myself do it. Every time I tried, it felt like erasing something that mattered. Ryan stared at her, his anger colliding with something else. Something dangerous. You think it didn't matter to me? You think I just walked away and forgot? Kelly's breath hitched. Did you? Ryan shook his head, his jaw clenched. No. I thought about you every damn day. The words hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Kelly's eyes shimmered, but she didn't look away. Then why didn't you call? Ryan laughed bitterly. Because I thought you didn't want me. You said annulment was the right thing. Kelly's voice cracked. It was the practical thing, not the right thing. Ryan froze, his heart pounding. So what now? Kelly exhaled slowly, her hands curling around her mug like it was a lifeline. Now we figure out what we want. Not what's practical. Not what makes sense. What we want. Ryan stared at her, his chest tight, his mind spinning. He wanted to say, I want you. He wanted to say, I never stopped wanting you. But the words tangled in his throat. Instead, he said, You're serious? Kelly nodded. Dead serious. Ryan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Okay, fine. Let's figure it out. Kelly's lips curved into a small, almost shy smile. Good. For a moment, they just sat there, the hum of the coffee shop fading into the background. Ryan felt something shift, something dangerous and exhilarating, like the universe had handed him a second chance and dared him to take it. Kelly broke the silence first, her voice soft but steady. Ryan. Yeah. Her smile widened, warm and teasing now. You still do that Elvis impression? Ryan laughed, the tension cracking like ice under sunlight. Only if you promise not to laugh. Kelly's eyes sparkled. No promises. Chapter 6. Snow Day Confessions. Ryan hadn't planned on spending his Saturday trapped in his apartment with Kelly Harper. Then again, he hadn't planned on still being married to her either. Life was full of surprises, most of them currently wearing a cream-colored sweater and sipping tea on his couch like she owned the place. The snowstorm had hit fast and hard, turning the city into a frozen fortress. Streets were buried, cars were stranded, and the weather app cheerfully declared, travel not advised. Ryan had texted Kelly to reschedule their figure this out talk, but she'd replied with a simple, already outside. Too late to turn back. Now here she was, cheeks pink from the cold, hair dusted with snowflakes, looking like every winter rom-com cliché Ryan had ever mocked. He was doomed. Nice place, Kelly said, glancing around his apartment. It was modern, minimal, and about as warm as a dentist's office. Ryan had never been big on decor. He'd been too busy running from his own thoughts. Thanks, he said, tossing her a blanket. Sorry about the lack of personality. Kelly smiled, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. It's very Florida guy moves to the Midwest. Ryan smirked. That's a theme now. Absolutely. She curled her legs under her, looking perfectly at home. Ryan hated how much he liked that. He sat across from her, nursing a mug of coffee. Outside, snowflakes swirled like confetti, and the wind howled against the windows. Inside, the silence stretched until Ryan couldn't take it anymore. So, he said, his voice rough, still married. Kelly's lips twitched. You really like opening with that. It's kind of hard to ignore, Ryan shot back. You dropped a bomb on me, Kelly. Her hazel eyes softened. I know, and I'm sorry. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Kelly hesitated, her fingers tightening around her mug. Because I didn't know how. Because I didn't want you to hate me. Ryan stared at her, his chest tight. Hate you? Kelly, he stopped, the words tangling in his throat. He wanted to say I could never hate you. He wanted to say I missed you every damn day. But instead, he said, I just don't understand. Kelly set her mug down, her voice trembling. I didn't file the annulment because I couldn't make myself do it. Every time I tried, it felt wrong. Like I was erasing something that mattered. Ryan's breath caught. It mattered to me too. Their eyes locked, and the air shifted. Charged, electric. Ryan felt the pull. The same pull he'd felt in Vegas when she laughed at his Elvis impression and cracked his world open. He wanted to cross the room. Wanted to touch her. Wanted to erase 2 years of silence with one kiss. Kelly broke the tension first, her voice soft. Ryan, what do you want? Ryan swallowed hard. I don't know, he said honestly. I just know I don't want to lose you again. Kelly's eyes shimmered, and for a moment, Ryan thought she might cry. Instead, she smiled. A small, fragile smile that hit him harder than any storm. Then don't. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy with everything they weren't saying. Ryan stood, moving to the window, pretending to check the snow. Looks like we're stuck here for a while, he said, his voice low. Kelly's laugh was soft, almost teasing. Guess we'll have to make the best of it. Ryan turned, his heart pounding. You hungry? Starving. He grinned. Hope you like grilled cheese. It's my specialty. Kelly's eyes sparkled. Vegas Elvis and grilled cheese. You're full of surprises. Ryan chuckled, heading to the kitchen. Stick around. I've got more. An hour later, they were sitting on the floor, plates balanced on the coffee table, laughing over burnt edges and Ryan's tragic attempt at tomato soup. The storm raged outside, but inside, it felt warm. Dangerously warm. When the lights flickered and went out, Kelly gasped. Seriously? Ryan groaned. Perfect. Power outage. Kelly laughed, her voice bright in the darkness. Guess we're really stuck now. Ryan lit a candle, its glow soft and golden. Shadows danced on the walls, and Kelly's face looked like something out of a dream. Ryan's breath caught. He moved closer, the space between them shrinking until he could feel her warmth. Kelly. His voice was a whisper, raw and unsteady. She looked up, her eyes wide, her lips parted. Ryan. The moment stretched, electric, inevitable. And then, his phone buzzed loudly, shattering the spell. Ryan cursed under his breath, fumbling for it. Spam call. Of course. Kelly laughed, the tension cracking like ice. Guess the universe isn't ready for us yet. Ryan smiled, but his heart was still racing. Maybe it's just making us wait. Kelly's gaze held his, soft and certain. Maybe. Chapter 7. The X Factor. The storm had passed overnight, leaving the city buried under a glittering blanket of snow. Ryan stood at his window, coffee in hand, watching sunlight bounce off rooftops like diamonds. It should have felt peaceful. Didn't, because Kelly was still asleep on his couch. She'd curled up under the blanket after the power outage, claiming she was too cozy to move. Ryan hadn't argued. He just tossed her another pillow and tried not to think about how perfect she looked in the candlelight, laughing at his terrible grilled cheese. Now, in the quiet morning, he couldn't stop thinking about it. His phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the spell. Ryan glanced at the screen and froze. Sabrina, of course, because the universe wasn't done messing with him. He stared at the name, his stomach nodding. Sabrina was his last attempt at a relationship, a 6-month disaster that ended with her accusing him of being emotionally unavailable. Which, okay, maybe she had a point, but seeing her name now felt like a ghost from a life he didn't want anymore. Ryan swiped to answer before he could think better of it. Hey, Ryan. Sabrina's voice was bright, too bright. I heard you moved. Midwest, right? How's the frozen tundra? Ryan forced a laugh. Cold. Very cold. Well, I was thinking. Her tone shifted, syrupy sweet. I might be in your area next month. We should catch up. Ryan opened his mouth to respond, and froze again, because Kelly was awake now, sitting up on the couch, her hair tousled, her eyes sleepy but sharp. She was watching him, listening. Ryan said, his voice rough. I don't think that's a good idea. Sabrina laughed lightly. Come on, Ryan. It's just coffee. Ryan's jaw tightened. No, Sabrina. I'm seeing someone. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Kelly's brows shot up, her lips parting in surprise. Oh, Sabrina said, her tone cooling. Well, good for you. Ryan ended the call quickly, tossing the phone onto the counter like it had burned him. He turned to Kelly, his pulse hammering. That was your ex. Kelly's voice was calm, but her eyes were anything but. Ryan nodded. Yeah. Kelly tilted her head, her expression unreadable. And you're seeing someone? Ryan swallowed hard. I might be. Kelly's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Interesting. Ryan groaned, running a hand through his hair. Kelly, come on. I didn't mean. What did you mean? Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it now. Ryan crossed the room, stopping in front of her. I meant that I don't want her. I don't want anyone else. Kelly's breath hitched, but she masked it with a shrug. That's a big statement. Ryan crouched down, his eyes locking on hers. It's the truth. Silence stretched, heavy and electric. Kelly looked at him like she was searching for cracks, for lies. She didn't find any. Finally, she whispered, Ryan, this scares me. He nodded slowly. Me too. Her lips trembled, and for a moment, Ryan thought she might cry. Instead, she laughed. A soft, shaky laugh that broke his heart. You're terrible at grilled cheese, you know that? Ryan grinned, relief flooding his chest. Yeah, but my Elvis impression is solid. Kelly's eyes sparkled, and just like that, the tension cracked. But Ryan knew the truth lingered beneath the laughter, waiting for its moment. Chapter 8. Office politics and heartbeats. Brightwave marketing was buzzing like a beehive on Monday morning, and Ryan could feel the stares before he even reached his desk. It wasn't paranoia. People were looking, whispering, smiling in that we know something you don't think we know way. He dropped his bag, opened his laptop, and tried to ignore it. But when Jenna from social media leaned over the partition with a grin that could power a small city, he knew ignoring wasn't an option. So, Jenna said, her voice dripping with curiosity, how was your snow day? Ryan didn't look up. Cold. Aha. She smirked. Funny, Kelly said the same thing. Ryan froze, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Kelly said that? Jenna's grin widened. Oh, don't worry. She didn't give details. But, she wiggled her eyebrows. Rumors travel faster than Wi-Fi. Ryan groaned, rubbing his temples. Great. Jenna laughed and sauntered off, leaving Ryan to contemplate whether moving to Antarctica would be less awkward. By lunchtime, the whispers had evolved into full-blown speculation. Ryan caught snippets in the break room, HR manager and the new guy, and even Arthur Harlan, his department head, gave him a look that was equal parts amusement and warning. Mitchell, Harlan said, his voice dry as toast. Word of advice. Office romances are like fireworks. Pretty at first, then someone loses an eyebrow. Ryan blinked. This isn't. Harlan held up a hand. Not my business. Just don't let it mess with your work. Or hers. Ryan nodded, his jaw tight. Understood. But as he walked back to his desk, the words rattled in his head. Don't let it mess with your work. Too late. It was already messing with everything. His focus, his heartbeat, his ability to think straight whenever Kelly walked into a room. And speak of the devil. She walked in then, looking like every HR handbook warning and every dream Ryan had tried to forget. Her hair was loose today, tumbling over her shoulders, and her smile was polite, professional, except when her eyes met his. Then it wasn't polite at all. It was warm, familiar, dangerous. Ryan's pulse kicked into overdrive. He stood, meeting her halfway like he couldn't help himself. Hey, he said, his voice low. Hey, Kelly echoed, her lips curving just enough to make his chest ache. They stood there for a beat too long, the hum of the office fading into background noise. Ryan wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in his throat. So he did the only thing he could. He smiled, small and crooked, and walked away before he did something reckless. By the end of the day, Ryan had made a decision. He was done hiding, done pretending this was just a coincidence, just a complication. He wanted Kelly. He'd always wanted Kelly. And if the universe was giving him a second chance, he wasn't about to waste it. He grabbed his coat, his heart pounding, and headed for her office. She looked up as he entered, surprise flickering across her face. Ryan? She said, setting down her pen. He closed the door behind him, his voice steady now. We need to talk. Kelly's brows lifted. About what? Ryan took a breath, every nerve in his body on fire. About us. Chapter 9. The big freeze. Ryan closed the door to Kelly's office, his pulse pounding like a drumline. She looked up from her desk, surprise flickering across her face. then settling into something wary. Ryan. Her voice was calm, but her fingers tightened around the pen she'd just set down. What's going on? He took a breath, steadying himself. We need to talk. About us. Kelly's brows lifted, her expression guarded. Us? Yeah. Ryan moved closer, his voice low, deliberate. I'm done pretending this is just paperwork or coincidence. You and me, we're not an accident. Kelly's lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes shimmered with something he couldn't name. Hope? Fear? Both? Ryan pressed on. I've spent 2 years wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go. And now you're here. We're here. And I'm not wasting this chance. Kelly stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Ryan. Her voice was soft, trembling. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. His tone sharpened, raw and unfiltered. I want you, Kelly. I've always wanted you. Her breath hitched, but then her expression hardened like ice forming over water. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When reality sets in and you realize this isn't Vegas anymore? Ryan flinched. That's what you think this is? A novelty? Kelly's voice rose, brittle and sharp. I think this is a fantasy you're clinging to because you're lonely and starting over in a new city. Ryan's jaw clenched. Don't do that. Don't reduce what we had to a drunken mistake. Kelly's eyes flashed. It was a mistake, Ryan. We barely knew each other. Ryan stepped closer, his voice cracking. I knew enough. I knew you were the first person who ever made me feel like I wasn't broken. The words hung in the air, heavy and devastating. Kelly's lips trembled, her eyes glistening. But she shook her head, backing away like his confession was fire. Ryan. Her voice broke. I can't do this. He stared at her, his chest tight, his heart pounding like it was trying to escape. Can't or won't. Kelly swallowed hard, tears threatening. Both. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan felt something inside him fracture, sharp and cold. He nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. Okay. He turned, grabbed his coat, and walked out before she could see the look on his face. The look of a man who just lost something he wasn't sure he could survive losing twice. Outside, the wind cut like knives, and snowflakes stung his skin. Ryan shoved his hands into his pockets, his breath coming in harsh bursts. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to move, had to get away before the weight of her words crushed him completely. Behind him, Kelly stood at the window, watching him disappear into the white blur. Her hands shook, her heart screamed, but her feet wouldn't move. Because loving him had always been easy. Letting him in again, that was the hardest thing she'd ever faced. Chapter 10. Thawing out. Ryan had never been good at grand gestures. He wasn't the guy who showed up with roses or wrote sonnets. But as he stood outside Kelly's apartment in the freezing cold, snow crunching under his boots, he realized he didn't have a choice. If he wanted her, really wanted her, he had to prove it. Words weren't enough anymore. He checked his phone. No reply to his text. No answer to his call. She was shutting him out, and Ryan couldn't let that happen. Not again. So he did the only thing his desperate, half-frozen brain could come up with. He bought every ridiculous thing he could find at the corner store. A bouquet of mismatched flowers. A box of her favorite chocolates. Thank you, Vegas memories. And, because the universe clearly had a sense of humor, a cheap plastic Elvis figurine that wobbled when you tapped it. Now he stood at her door, arms full, heart pounding like a jackhammer. He knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. Kelly. His voice cracked against the icy air. Open the door. Silence. Ryan exhaled, his breath fogging in the cold. Fine, he muttered. Guess I'm doing this the hard way. He set the flowers and chocolates on the ground, pulled out the Elvis figurine, and held it up like a peace offering. Then, in the middle of the snow-covered hallway, he launched into the worst Elvis impression of his life. Well, thank you very much, he drawled, hips swaying awkwardly. I came here to say, I ain't nothing but a hound dog, baby crying all the time, because I miss you. The words echoed down the hall, ridiculous and raw. Ryan didn't care. He kept going, voice cracking, heart bleeding into every syllable. I screwed up, Kelly. I let you go once, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. I'm not doing it again. So if you want me to walk away, you're gonna have to tell me to my face, because I'm not leaving until you do. For a moment, nothing. Just the hum of the building and the sting of cold on his skin. Then the door opened. Kelly stood there, wrapped in a sweater, her eyes wide and shimmering. She looked at the flowers, the chocolates, the wobbling Elvis in his hand, and then at him. Her lips trembled, and Ryan braced himself for rejection. Instead, she laughed. A soft, shaky laugh that cracked the ice around his heart. Ryan Mitchell, she said, her voice breaking. You are absolutely insane. He grinned, relief flooding his chest. Yeah, but I'm your kind of insane. Kelly stared at him for a long, breathless moment. Then she stepped forward, grabbed his coat, and pulled him inside like she couldn't stand another second of distance. The door slammed shut behind them, and Ryan barely had time to drop Elvis before her lips were on his. The kiss was fierce, desperate, and everything he'd been starving for since the day he watched her plane disappear into the sky. It wasn't neat or polite. It was messy and real and perfect. When they finally broke apart, breathless and tangled in each other's arms, Kelly whispered against his lips, "You're late." Ryan blinked. "Late? For 2 years," she said, smiling through tears. "But I'll take it." Ryan laughed, pressing his forehead to hers. "Better late than never." Outside, snow fell in soft, silent sheets. Inside, Ryan and Kelly stood in the warmth of something they'd both been too scared to admit. This wasn't a mistake. It never had been. Chapter 11. Happily ever awkward. 3 months later, Ryan Mitchell had learned 3 important things about Midwest winters. 1. Snow looks romantic in movies. In real life, it's a frozen death trap. 2. Shoveling is cardio. Cardio he never signed up for. 3. Kelly Harper makes even the cold worth it. He stood in their kitchen, watching Kelly dance barefoot to an old playlist while flipping pancakes like a pro. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching in her hair, and Ryan thought, not for the first time, that he'd hit the jackpot without even pulling the lever. "Remind me again," Ryan said, leaning against the counter, "why we didn't move to Florida?" Kelly shot him a grin over her shoulder. "Because you promised me snow angels and cozy nights by the fire." Ryan smirked. "I also promised you I'd never wear socks with sandals. That was a life or death vow." Kelly laughed, sliding a plate toward him. "Eat before you freeze to death." Ryan sat, taking in the scene. The warm kitchen, the smell of coffee, the woman who turned his life upside down in the best possible way. It was surreal, this domestic bliss with the person he'd once called his 9-hour bride. Kelly joined him, her smile softening. "You know," she said, stirring her coffee, "HR still hasn't forgiven me." Ryan grinned. "For what?" "Falling for the new guy. For marrying him 2 years before he was hired." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Pretty sure that's not in the handbook." Ryan chuckled. "Guess we'll have to write our own rules." Kelly reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "We already did." Later that night, they sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, snow falling softly outside. Ryan raised his glass of wine, his voice warm and steady. "To second chances," he said. Kelly clinked her glass against his, her smile radiant. "And to never letting go again." Ryan kissed her then. Slow, deep, and certain. No neon lights, no midnight chapel, no hangover regrets. Just them. In the quiet glow of a life they'd fought for. A love that had waited patiently for its moment. Outside, winter raged on. Inside, Ryan and Kelly were proof that sometimes, the universe knows exactly what it's doing.